He found two sisters hiding in his barn. What they whispered that night changed his soul. Imagine returning to your quiet farm, only to discover lives at stake right under your roof. Two young sisters, terrified, hunted for reasons you won't believe. Jacob had no idea that their desperate whispers would drag him into a world of fear, courage, and secrets so dark that even the night seems to hide them. Watch carefully. Every second holds a revelation that will leave you breathless. The sun had barely dipped behind the jagged horizon when Jacob Miller heard the soft rustle in his barn. It was a sound that didn't belong to the usual chorus of horses, or the creak of wood settling under the weight of the evening. He paused, his calloused hand stilling on the reins of his tired mare. Luna! A chill swept through the air, whispering of secrets and shadows. Curiosity gnawed at him, and despite the weariness etched into his bones, he made his way across the dusty yard, the twilight casting long, spectral shadows. As he approached, the barn door hung slightly ajar, creaking ominously with every breath of wind. Jacob hesitated, the weight of solitude heavy on his shoulders. For years, he had tended to this land alone, ever since the fever had swept through his small town, leaving him with nothing but memories and echoes of laughter that faded like the last rays of dusk. The world outside was cruel, a relentless expanse of prairies and mountains, a place where men fought for survival, often sacrificing their humanity in the process. But here, in this barn, amidst the dust and hay, something stirred a flicker of life that beckoned him closer. He stepped inside, the dim light revealing a tableau of hay bales and rustic tools. There, huddled together in the corner, were two figures, their faces illuminated by a shaft of fading light. At first glance, they seemed like specters from a storybook, a vision of sisters, both wild and beautiful, their hair cascading like dark waterfalls around their shoulders, their eyes wide with fear and defiance. They were Apaches, their presence striking against the backdrop of the barn, which smelled of hay and the faint tang of sweat and leather. "What brings you here?" Jacob asked, his voice low and steady, masking the tumult of his heart. He had seen the brutality of men, the way they hunted and felled one another. But these girls, these sisters seemed different. They were not mere trespassers. They were shadows of a world he barely understood, yet felt drawn to. The older sister, her face marked by the dust of the road, raised her chin defiantly. "We seek refuge," she whispered, her voice a fragile melody that fluttered in the still air. "They hunt us." Jacob's brow furrowed as he scanned the barn, his instincts screaming at him to protect them. "Who hunts you?" The question lingered, heavy with implication. "The ones who do not understand," she replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "They want to take us back, to turn us into something we are not." He felt an ache in his chest, a familiar pang of empathy that often haunted him in the stillness of the night. He had lost everything to a world that valued strength over compassion, and yet here stood two souls who embodied the very essence of life and survival. He made a decision, one that would alter the course of his existence. "You can stay here. No one will harm you under my roof." The sisters exchanged glances, a silent conversation that spoke volumes. The younger one, who looked barely more than a child, nodded, her expression shifting from fear to tentative hope. They moved deeper into the barn, their presence transforming the space from mere wood and hay into something sacred, a sanctuary forged in the fires of desperation. As night enveloped the land, Jacob settled on a hay bale across from them, the shadows flickering as he lit a lantern. The sisters sat close together, their breaths mingling in the quiet. He watched them, his heart swelling with a strange warmth, an emotion he hadn't felt in years. The world outside raged on, but here, in this moment, the air felt charged with possibility, as if the universe conspired to weave their fates together. "What are your names?" he asked, breaking the silence that cocooned them like a fragile veil. Leela, the older sister, replied, her voice steady, "And this is Sani." "Leela and Sani," he repeated, savoring the names like a prayer. "I'm Jacob." They fell into a comfortable rhythm, sharing stories under the soft glow of the lantern. Leela spoke of the endless plains where they once ran free, their laughter echoing through the canyons. Sani, with her wide eyes, recounted tales of the stars above, of constellations that guided their people through the dark. Jacob listened, enraptured, feeling the weight of his own solitude lift, if only for a moment. But as the night deepened, Jacob sensed the danger looming over them, like a storm gathering in the distance. He had seen the way men hunted, how they reveled in the thrill of the chase, how they turned hearts of gold to dust. The sisters carried the legacy of their people, and in their vulnerability, he saw a reflection of his own lost hope. He understood the world's cruelty, the way it stripped away innocence, leaving nothing but a barren shell. Suddenly, a noise shattered the stillness, a distant shout, the unmistakable clatter of hooves pounding on the hard earth. Jacob's heart raced, adrenaline surging through him. "We have to hide," he urged, the urgency in his voice cutting through the calm. "They've come for you." Leela's eyes widened, the realization dawning upon her. "We can't let them take us," she whispered fiercely, gripping Sandy's hand tightly. "We won't go back." Jacob felt the weight of their fear pressing down on him, and in that moment, he knew he had a choice to make. He could turn them away, let the storm crash against the barn, or he could stand with them, shoulder to shoulder against the darkness. He chose the latter, his heart pounding with a resolve that felt foreign, yet exhilarating. "Stay close," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I'll protect you." As the barn door creaked open, Jacob stood tall, ready to face the encroaching danger. Outside, the world was a tempest of shadows and chaos, but within these walls, he felt a flicker of hope, a fragile, incandescent flame that could illuminate even the darkest of nights. He had found two sisters hiding in his barn, and what they whispered that night would change his soul forever. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. The barn felt alive, a cocoon of warmth and whispers, the scent of hay mingling with the earthy musk of the horses that had long since been sold. Outside, the world was a tempest of noise and uncertainty, the distant shouts of men, echoing in the twilight like a dark omen. Jacob stood at the threshold, his heart pounding like the hooves of the horses that had once raced across his fields, uncertain of what lay ahead. Jacob, Leela's voice pierced through the din, sharp and urgent. She stepped closer, her dark hair catching the last rays of sunlight, casting a halo around her determined face. "We need to hide. They'll be here any moment." He turned to see Sandy clinging to her sister's side, her wide eyes reflecting confusion and fear. In that moment, Jacob felt the weight of their terror settle over him, like a heavy blanket. He could empathize with their plight, having weathered storms of his own loss and solitude, carving deep lines across his heart. Now, standing at the crossroads of his own reckoning, he knew he could not abandon them to the mercies of the night. "Come," he urged, leading them deeper into the barn. The shadows stretched and twisted like fingers reaching for the sister, but Jacob steeled himself against the cold grip of dread. He motioned toward a stack of hay bales in the far corner. "We can hide there." As they crouched low, Sandy pressed against Leela, her small frame trembling. Jacob's heart ached for the innocent girl, whose world had been shattered too soon. Leela, on the other hand, maintained an air of fierce resolve. She glanced at Jacob, her expression a mixture of gratitude and command. "You need to be ready. If they find us, there's no telling what they'll do." The barn's wooden beams creaked overhead, a haunting lullaby of uncertainty, as Jacob scanned the darkened doorway, his instincts sharp as a hawk's talon. He could hear the distant sound of galloping hooves drawing nearer, each beat echoing like a war drum in his chest. The sisters were alive with fear, and he felt it pulse through the air, thick and suffocating. "Jacob," Leela whispered fiercely, breaking through his reverie. "Are you sure you want to do this? They'll come after you, too." He turned to her, feeling the gravity of her words weigh heavily on his heart. "I won't let them take you," he replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "You deserve a chance, just like anyone else." The barn door rattled, the hinges protesting against the intrusion. Jacob's breath hitched in his throat, and he crouched low beside the sisters. The sound of voices drifted in from outside, harsh and demanding, punctuated by the sound of boots stomping across the dry earth. "Check the barn. They can't have gone far," one of the men shouted, his voice gravelly and loud, a clear harbinger of the storm that was about to break. Jacob's pulse quickened. He could feel the sisters' fear radiating off them in waves. Leela's hand grasped his arm, knuckles white with tension. "They sound dangerous," she murmured, glancing at Sandy, who had buried her face in her sister's shoulder. "We'll be okay," Jacob assured them, though doubt gnawed at the edges of his confidence. He could feel the sisters' trust resting on him, a fragile flame flickering in the wind. Outside, the voices grew louder, and he clenched his fist, determination solidifying within him. "Let's just try to stay quiet," he whispered, though the words felt feeble in the face of the gathering storm. The barn door swung open with a creak, and a silhouette loomed in the entrance, framed by the fading light. Jacob's heart raced as he held his breath, muscles tense like a coiled spring. Search everywhere, the man barked, stepping further into the barn, his boots crunching on the hay scattered across the floor. They can't hide forever. Jacob's mind raced, calculating their options. The barn, with its towering walls and dark corners, felt like an old friend, a sanctuary that could either shield them or betray them. He held his breath, every fiber of his being focused on remaining unseen. Over here, another voice called, and Jacob's stomach sank. The sound of footsteps echoed closer, the men's laughter mocking the fearful stillness. They think they can hide from us. We'll find them. Mark my words. Leela's grip tightened around Jacob's arm as they huddled behind the hay bales, the faint scent of straw mingling with the sweat of their shared anxiety. Sandy's breathing quickened, and Jacob wished for a way to shield her from this reality, a world steeped in cruelty and danger. Please, she whispered, her voice so small it nearly broke Jacob's heart. I don't want to go back. The sincerity of her plea wrapped around him like a vice, igniting a fire within his chest. He couldn't let them down. He wouldn't. The men continued to search, their voices growing more frustrated by the moment. They can't have gone far. Check under the hay, one shouted, and Jacob's stomach twisted in knots. Leela, he murmured, trying to keep his voice steady. If they find us, I'll distract them. You and Sandy need to escape. No, Leela's voice was fierce, a protective growl that sent shivers down his spine. You can't. I won't leave you behind. The intensity of her words pierced through the fear, a testament to the bond they had formed in such a short time. Jacob met her gaze, and in that moment, they understood the weight of their shared resolve. He could see the flicker of defiance mirrored in her eyes, a spark that ignited his own courage. The men were nearing the hay bales, their shadows dancing ominously against the wooden walls. Jacob felt a surge of adrenaline, an instinctive urge to fight for these sisters, who had unwittingly woven themselves into the fabric of his life. Get ready, he whispered, his voice low and steady. On the count of 3, we'll make a break for the back door. Leela nodded, her eyes fierce as she took a deep breath, preparing herself for the chaos that was about to unfold. Sandy clutched her sister's arm, eyes wide with fear, and Jacob felt his heart swell with determination. 1, 2. Before he could reach 3, the men burst into view, their faces twisted in confusion and anger. There they are, one shouted, pointing directly at them. Jacob sprang into action, his instincts kicking in as he leaped from his hiding spot. Run, he yelled, charging toward the nearest man, his fists clenched. Chaos erupted as Leela and Sandy darted for the back door, the sound of their feet pounding against the wooden floor, echoing through the barn. Jacob felt the adrenaline coursing through his veins, propelling him forward as he engaged with the first man, throwing a punch that landed squarely against his jaw. The man stumbled back, surprised, but Jacob didn't wait for him to recover. He turned, adrenaline sharpening his senses, and rushed toward the door where the sisters had fled. Go, he shouted, pushing them ahead as he glanced back to see the other men closing in. The barn felt alive with the sounds of chaos shouts, the rush of feet, and the terrible, frightening knowledge that they were on the brink of being captured. Leela turned back for a moment, her expression a mixture of fear and fierce determination. We can't leave you, she called, but Jacob shook his head, his heart pounding as he urged them onward. Just go, I'll hold them off. With a final, desperate glance, Leela grabbed Sandy's hand, and they barreled out into the open air, the cool night wrapping around them like a protective shroud. Jacob felt a surge of hope as he heard their footsteps retreating, but he knew he couldn't let them down. The remaining men surged forward, their anger palpable as Jacob faced them, heart racing and fists ready. If he could buy them just a few more seconds, maybe they could escape into the night and find safety. Maybe, just maybe, they could forge a new path away from the darkness that hunted them. Come on, then he shouted, his voice ringing with defiance. You want them, you'll have to go through me first. In that moment, Jacob understood the true weight of his choice. The barn, once a mere shelter, had transformed into a battleground for hope and resilience. He was no longer alone, and as the men advanced, he felt the flicker of courage ignite within him, a blazing fire fueled by the very essence of the sisters he had chosen to protect. And in that fire, amidst the chaos of the night, he knew he would fight for their freedom, come what may. Chapter 3. Chapter 3. The barn was a cocoon of shadows, the air thick with the scent of hay, and the lingering warmth of the day. Outside, the evening had draped itself over the land like a heavy quilt, muffling the world beyond the wooden walls. Jacob's heart thudded in his chest, each beat a reminder of the urgency that crackled in the air like a summer storm. He could hear the distant voices of the men, harsh and demanding, the sound weaving through the night like a sinister thread. Leela pressed her back against the rough, splintered wall, her eyes wide and fierce as she watched Jacob. Her dark hair fell around her shoulders, wild and untamed, matching the fire in her spirit. "You can't go out there," she whispered, her voice a low, urgent plea. "They'll kill you." "Maybe," Jacob replied, his throat dry as he swallowed hard. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on him, but he could not let fear dictate his actions. "But I won't let them take you. Not while I'm still breathing." Sani, small and fragile-looking, against the backdrop of the barn, clutched Leela's arm, her blue eyes shimmering with unshed tears. She was a delicate flower, growing amidst a field of thorns, her innocence a stark contrast to the chaos swirling outside. "Jacob, please don't go," she whimpered, her voice trembling like leaves caught in a gust of wind. Jacob knelt before them, bringing himself to their level, trying to convey a sense of calm that was rapidly escaping him. "I'll be back, I promise. Just wait for me." Here the resolve in his voice surprised even him, but he knew deep down that this moment was not just about the sisters. It was about reclaiming a part of himself he had buried under layers of grief and solitude. Leela's gaze softened for a fleeting moment, and Jacob saw in her eyes a reflection of his own fear and determination. She nodded, though the tension in her body remained taut, like a bowstring ready to snap. "Be careful." With a final glance at the sisters, Jacob turned and stepped out into the night. The cool air hit him like a wave, and the sounds of the outside world rushed in a cacophony of rustling leaves, distant howls, and the men's voices, now closer and more menacing. Shadows danced across the ground, and he could make out the figures moving through the moonlight, their faces obscured but their intentions clear. He crept along the side of the barn, each footfall muffled by the soft earth beneath him. The moon hung high, casting silver beams that illuminated the path ahead, but every step felt like a step deeper into a darkened abyss. He peered around the corner, catching sight of the men, 3 of them, rugged and menacing, their silhouettes stark against the backdrop of the night. "Where the hell are they?" one of the men growled, his voice laced with frustration. "They couldn't have gotten far. They'll be hiding somewhere close," another replied, scanning the area with a predatory gleam in his eye. "They are just a couple of girls. They won't last long in the wild." Jacob clenched his fist, anger boiling beneath the surface. They didn't see the sisters as human beings, didn't understand the courage it took to survive. They were prey in the eyes of these hunters, mere objects to be captured and used. The very thought sent a surge of protective instinct coursing through him, igniting a fire that had long been extinguished. He had to act. He couldn't let them find Layla and Sam. Taking a deep breath, Jacob stepped into the open, his presence startling the men. They turned, eyes widening in surprise at the sight of him. "What are you doing here?" Old man, the tallest of the 3, sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "This is none of your business." "It is now," Jacob replied, his voice steady despite the tremor in his heart. He squared his shoulders, drawing on every ounce of courage he had. "You need to leave. Those girls are under my protection." The men exchanged glances, laughter bubbling up within them like poison. "You think you can protect them? You're just a farmer. What can you do against us?" But Jacob stood firm, the memories of loss flooding his mind, a reminder of everything he had lost, and the realization that he could no longer remain a passive observer in his own life. "I may be just a farmer, but I'll fight for them if I have to." The air crackled with tension, a standoff that felt as old as time itself. The men shifted, their expressions darkening, and Jacob could sense the danger lurking just beneath their bravado. "Then you'll regret this," the tallest man spat, lunging forward with a cruel grin. Jacob reacted instinctively, his body moving before his mind could catch up. He stepped to the side, dodging the man's advance, and swung his fist with all the force he could muster. The impact echoed through the night, the crunch of bone against flesh resonating in his ears. As the man stumbled back, shock etched across his face. The other 2 men charged at him, their movements swift and aggressive. Jacob's heart raced, adrenaline surging through his veins. He was outnumbered and outmatched, but the thought of Leela and Sani caged by these men fueled his resolve. He ducked and weaved, throwing punches and kicks, each movement instinctual, driven by a primal need to protect. Pain blossomed across his knuckles as they connected with flesh, but he pushed through, each hit a reminder of his purpose. "Get him," one of the men shouted, and the two of them surrounded him, their eyes glinting with malice. In that moment, everything felt surreal, as though he were caught in a dream from which he couldn't wake. The barn stood behind him, a beacon of safety, and he could almost hear Leela's voice urging him on, giving him strength. With a fierce determination, Jacob launched himself at the nearest man, grappling with him until he felt the satisfying weight of his opponent hitting the ground. He turned just in time to catch the other man's fist, gripping it tightly and twisting until the man yelped in pain. But then, the tall man was back on his feet, rage twisting his features. He swung a heavy fist, connecting with Jacob's jaw, and pain exploded like fireworks behind his eyes. Jacob staggered but didn't fall. He could not afford to falter. The fight felt endless, a chaotic dance of survival and desperation. Jacob's breath came in gasps, his muscles screaming in protest, but he held on, a fierce protector in a world that had stripped him of so much. And then, with a final surge of strength, he landed a decisive blow, sending the tall man sprawling into the dirt. The other two hesitated, uncertainty flickering in their eyes as they looked at their fallen comrade. "Let's get out of here," one of them shouted, and they retreated, the sound of their footsteps fading into the night, leaving Jacob panting, adrenaline coursing through him like wildfire. He stood there for a moment, heart racing, the world around him returning to focus. The barn loomed behind him, a fortress of hope and safety. He thought of Leela and Sanny, and the urgency of his actions hit him like a wave. He turned and rushed back inside, breathless and shaken. The sight of the sisters waiting in the shadows brought him a wave of relief. Leela stood tense, her hands clenched into fists, while Sanny's wide eyes brimmed with concern. "Jacob," Leela exclaimed, rushing forward. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "No," he managed, forcing a smile even as he caught his breath. "I took care of them. They won't be back." Sanny's face lit up with a mixture of relief and wonder. "You fought them?" Jacob nodded, feeling a warmth bloom in his chest. "I had to protect you both." Leela's expression softened, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of something more than fear in her eyes, gratitude, perhaps, or recognition of their shared struggle. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "You didn't have to do that." "But I wanted to," he replied, the truth of his words settling between them. "You both matter more than anything to me now." In that moment, the bond between them solidified, forged in the crucible of danger and defiance. Outside, the night was thick with uncertainty, but inside the barn, they stood together, a fragile family born from the ashes of their separate pain. Jacob felt a flicker of hope ignite within him, a promise that perhaps, together, they could find a way to heal. But as they settled into the quiet of the barn, the shadows lingered just beyond the walls, a reminder that their fight was far from over.